Hello, everyone. I'm Derek McGinty, and this is the D.C. Office of the Tenant Advocates webinar series, OTA from A to Z. And our topic today is renter's insurance. If you rent your home in Washington, D.C., you ought to know that only about 4 in 10 renters carry renter's insurance. That's compared to about 95% of homeowners. And if you think that sounds a bit crazy, well, it sort of is. And today we're going to get into why so many of us are not making that very wise investment that we all should probably be making. Our guest is Wayne McOwen, and he is a man of many hats. He is the Executive Director for the D.C. Insurance Federation, also Executive Director for the D.C. Insurance Regulatory Trust Fund Bureau. He teaches licensed insurance agents for the Cape School, and he serves as on the board of the Gallaudet University Risk and Management Insurance Board. It's a mouthful, but we know he knows what he's talking about, Wayne. Glad to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is such a strange number. 40% or so of renters are the only ones who have the insurance. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a strange number, but it's not a surprising number. For whatever reason, renters are more reluctant to spend the money to buy insurance to protect their valuables. And when you think about it, when you think about how cost-effective renter's insurance is, and we'll get into that and some of the perks that you get with a renter's insurance policy, it really is a very cost-effective investment.
All right, how much does it cost?
Well, anywhere in the District of Columbia from $15 to $30 a month. There is a website, and I'll refer to this several times during our discussion, the District of Columbia Insurance Department, which is the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking, DISB, has a website, disb.dc.gov. And on that website, you'll find rate comparisons from the companies that provide renter's insurance in the District of Columbia.
Wow.
And they range anywhere from $91 to $234 annually, and that's based on $20,000 of insurance on your valuables.
You know, I can tell you, I was a renter in D.C. back in the 80s, and one of the first things I got was renter's insurance because I was terrified that something might happen, and I had no money, so I couldn't replace my goods. Why do you think that impression has not gotten across to more than half of the renters?
Well, I really can't answer that. I don't know if they feel it's some kind of discretionary investment. They want to spend money on something else. Some renters have the mistaken idea that if they live in an apartment building, the landlord's insurance is going to protect them. And in fact, the landlord's insurance is not going to protect them. In some cases, landlords will require as a condition of the lease that you have renter's insurance.
It's almost like a mortgage insurance, where the mortgage company will require you to have insurance as a condition of getting the loan.
That's right.
But why do landlords care whether or not I lose all my stuff in a fire or whatever else?
Well, they don't so much care about your valuables, they care about the liability part. A renter's insurance policy has several components. One component is coverage C, which is on the contents, and then you have coverage D, which is loss of use, and I'll talk about that a little later. And then you have liability and medical payments. Now, liability means that the renter's insurance policy will cover you if something happens and you are legally liable, you damage somebody or somebody's property. So the landlord believes that if each tenant has insurance, their liability will come into play first if something happens on their property.
All right, so that is legal then to require that insurance?
Yes, it is.
Not many landlords do it, or it's a small group?
Maybe half of the landlords do,
All
and probably only landlords that are in high-rise buildings. You know, if you rent a house or you rent a 2 or 3 unit apartment, you might find the circumstances are different.
All right, well, let's talk about the things renters ought to look at when they are shopping for renter's insurance. And you say there are 6 basic factors at play.
That's right. Well, 6 things that renters should consider. They should consider more than 6 things, but these are the 6. These are the top 6 things. And the top 6 things are, the first thing is, what kind of a renter are you? Are you renting in an apartment building? Are you renting a single-family house? Are you a senior that's renting in a senior living circumstance?
What difference does that make?
Well, Are you a student in a dormitory or a vacation renter? And it makes a difference in terms of the kind of coverage, the kind of exposure, the kind of liability that you might have. So, for example, if you are a senior, let's say, and you are living in a home now, you sell your house, you downsize. Many seniors don't think about the fact that now they are becoming renters. Even though they're living in an assisted living environment where a lot of the services are provided, they still have valuable possessions that they bring with them, and they're still responsible for their own liability. So they become renters.
What about the next thing?
Well, if you go on a business trip and you stay over in a hotel, even for one day, you're a renter.
Now, I never thought of that.
Right. You go on vacation, maybe you go on vacation for a couple of weeks, you rent a house, you rent an apartment, a condo, you're a renter.
You need separate insurance. In other words, if you already have renter's insurance at home and you go on vacation, is there some other insurance I need to get?
No, you have insurance on your apartment or on your house that will follow you. And that's one of the perks of having renter's insurance. If you have renter's insurance that covers your valuables, you have a percentage of that limit away from the premises. You store your stuff in a use storeroom kind of place, or you have a student that goes off to college and lives in a dormitory, a percentage of your coverage at your home or your apartment will apply.
I'm glad you brought up the size of coverage, because people are going to ask, well, how much renter's insurance do I need? You mentioned $20,000. I imagine some have less, some have more.
Absolutely. And many people don't realize until you sit down with a pen and paper and try to put a value on your possessions and think about not only what the value is, what you might think they're worth, but think about how much money it would cost you to replace them. And so that is the key, really, is to determine what the values are based upon what it would cost to replace them. And some renters' policies you can purchase on an actual cash value basis, meaning the insurance company will take into account depreciation when it settles the claim. Then there are other renters' policies that you can buy on a replacement cost basis, which costs a little bit more, but the insurance company will pay you on the basis of what it costs to replace like kind and quality.
I know when you look at policies, they often have exclusions, things that aren't covered. Jewelry, for example, is something that's only covered up to a certain amount. Should you get a special rider or pay close attention to that if you have expensive jewelry?
Absolutely, and that's one of the 6 items that we focus on here. One of the top things to consider is, do you have high value or unique items? And a lot of people think of jewelry because there is a limit on jewelry. Some companies will limit it to $1,000 or $2,000. But you may have jewelry that's valuable beyond that limit, and you might want to schedule it. And so what happens is the insurance company will put a rider on the basic insurance policy, the renter's policy. And that rider not only gives additional coverage for jewelry, but it also gives better coverage. It will cover you if you lose it. It will cover you if it goes down the garbage disposal, for example. And so the coverage is a little broader than it would be on the regular renter's insurance policy. The other thing is, people don't think about sports equipment, golf equipment.
Is that not usually covered?
It's covered. It's all covered, but there are limits on all of that. There are limits on electronic equipment and on computers and things that we all have. Things, iPhones today cost a great deal of money, and you carry them around with you. That's another benefit of renter's insurance, is that the coverage follows you.
There are so many commercials out there now, various companies claiming to have the best price, but when you go to try to actually sign up, it's hard to compare. What am I getting for the money? If it's more expensive, maybe I'm getting better coverage. How do you get the best price and it have to be the best value?
Well, you should shop. You definitely should shop around. Again, I'll refer to the Department of Insurance and their website and the comparison they have with various insurance companies and what their rates are and what's available from those companies. But you also want to look at those companies in terms of the kinds of products they have. Some companies will sell comprehensive renter's insurance, provides a little bit more coverage than the basic policy. You also want to know that the company is licensed in the District of Columbia, and you also want to know that the insurance company is going to be reliable. Are they going to be there to pay the claim? And that means
How do you determine that?
Well, you want to know that they're fiscally sound. One way you can determine that, again, is to use the Department of Insurance as a resource. They really are a tremendous resource for consumers, and they have a consumer advocate and a division where you can call and ask these questions, and they will tell you about that insurance company. The other way that insurance professionals determine whether a company is viable is what's called the BEST report, B-E-S-T, and that is a company that rates insurance companies based upon their financial wherewithal. And so you get an A rating, A+ rating, and so forth.
One question people will ask, and this is the next item on your list, is do I qualify for discounts? Discounts are good.
Discounts are very good, and there are many types of discounts. For example, if you have a renter's insurance and you have some kind of mitigation system.
You mean like a burglar alarm or a fire alarm or
smoke detectors? Right. Many places now have sprinkler systems. It used to be just commercial buildings have sprinkler systems, so now you find them in apartment buildings and sometimes in a private home. You have burglar alarm discounts, those kinds of things. And also there are discounts for seniors. If you're a senior, some companies will give you a discount based on your seniority in life, right? And also if you buy your renter's insurance from the same company that you have your automobile insurance with, you sometimes eligible for a multi-policy discount.
You know, I'm wondering, are there people that insurance companies just won't insure for apartments?
Well, there are some types of risks that are difficult for insurance companies to insure. One of the things that insurance companies look for are pets. One of the things that you alluded to earlier was the exclusions on the policies. And when you buy an insurance policy, any kind of insurance policy, you should really read, if you don't read the whole insurance policy, if you don't have insomnia and you don't want to be put to sleep, read the exclusions. That tells you what you don't have. And read the conditions. That tells you what you are supposed to do, what your responsibilities are to keep the policy in force. So one of the exclusions could be you have an exotic pet. If you had a monkey or some kind of an exotic pet, some insurance companies might feel that that liability is too exotic.
So would they exclude that, or they just not insure you at all?
They might do one or the other. Depends on the company. There are also some dog breeds that, you know, I'm a dog lover. I think there are no bad dogs, only bad people that have dogs. But there are some companies that say, look, if you have this certain breed of dog, the liability may be too difficult for us, and so you go to another company.
What happens when you make a claim or two? Because I remember a few years ago, there was a little bit of controversy because homeowners insurance companies were dropping people after making 2 claims within a couple of years or whatever. Is that possibly true for renters as well? If you make a couple of claims, they may drop you?
Well, you know, I can't speak for each individual insurance company, and you know, the thing is, there are several dozen insurance companies providing renters insurance in the District of Columbia, and all of them, each of them has their own parameters in terms of, you know, what's acceptable in terms of exposure and the number of claims. So it's hard to answer that question. It should not be that a company would drop you after, you know, 1 or 2 claims. Maybe it would depend on what kind of claim that was.
How has the D.C. market for renters insurance changed as the city has gotten more and more populated and as rents have just skyrocketed and buildings have become more valuable?
Well, the answer is that the market for insurance has gotten more competitive. More companies have moved here. They want to do business here. Again, the Department of Insurance, I'll refer to, has done a really good job in incentivizing companies and inviting companies to come and do business in the district to make it a healthier marketplace and to provide a better basket of companies, if you will, for people to select from. So I think as DC has grown, the market has grown, that means more competition, and that means better pricing.
Sounds like it's good for consumers that the market has grown the way it has.
It's very good for consumers. And now you have, you have traditional companies that all of us are familiar with, sort of the name brands, State Farm, Allstate, Nationwide, Progressive, and you see their commercials a lot on TV. And now there's some new entrants. There's a company now called Lemonade that is providing renters insurance. Not Lemonade Insurance Company, just Lemonade.
Oh.
Yeah, and very interesting company. And some companies that sell online, that you can buy your insurance on the web and not deal with a person. And other companies that are traditionally companies that sell through an agent, an insurance agent, and you can go to that agent and discuss your risks, your perils that you're concerned about, what your valuables are, and they will guide you in terms of what kind of coverage you should have.
You know, I think a lot of us tend to judge companies based on whether we've heard of them before. And, so you see the commercials for Progressive and the Geico and the big companies. You seem to say that you might save some money by looking for some smaller companies that maybe aren't spending so much of their money on advertising. How do I know whether it's a fly-by-night company that's good or?
Well, that's a very good question. And let me just be clear that the companies that spend a lot of money on advertising aren't necessarily companies for which you will pay the highest price. Just because you have a boutique company that's coming into the market doesn't mean that they will always be the lowest price. Some of the companies I named, some of the name brands are very competitive companies, and they have a lot of experience in the marketplace. Sometimes a new entrant may be just getting a footing in the marketplace and so forth. But how do you know you're getting the value? Again, one of the things is you want to check out the company. What's the rating? How much financial backing do they have? Are they, solid, and are they going to be there in 10 years or 5 years when you submit a claim?
All right. We're running out of time, but before we go, where can I find more information about renters insurance? You mentioned the website.
Well, the website is a very good place. Of course, nowadays you can Google anything. You can write a sentence that says, "What kind of insurance should I have?" And Google will say, "Read all this." Yeah. And but the regulator is a really, really good resource. I mean, it's their business to regulate insurance, to know what companies are properly licensed, to know what companies have the financial wherewithal to be there when you need them. And so I'd say the DISB, and again, it's DISB.dc.gov. And I would say that is the premier reference for people in DC.
I did want to get to one other thing. Have you heard any particularly terrible stories about how things turned out for folks who did not have renters insurance?
Well, I know that within the last couple of years, there have been some very tragic fires in apartment buildings, and I am aware that in one of those circumstances, there were multiple households in that building, and it turns out that only one of them had renters insurance.
Wow.
And so you have, a real tragedy. You not only have now you have no place to live because you've had a fire in the building, but your possessions have been wiped out. You have to replace all of those things. And that brings me to one additional thing that we didn't cover. Two of the other coverages that you have when you buy a renter's policy, you get the coverage on your possessions, you get liability coverage, as I mentioned before, and that liability coverage is worldwide. If you're in Paris, France, and you you have an accident and you injure somebody, your insurance is there for you. But you also get loss of use coverage. And loss of use means if you had a fire or you have some circumstance by which your dwelling is no longer habitable for some period of time, that coverage will help you to move into a replacement unit somewhere, maybe a motel or wherever, and it will cover you for the reasonable amount of time that it takes to put you back in your original habitational space. And it'll also cover additional living expense. So if you had to go out to eat and you had extra expense, it will pay for the reasonable extra expense. Of course, you have to read your policy and see if there are limitations or how much of this coverage you would have, but it's a really good perk for renters. And the final thing I'd mention is medical insurance. You have liability insurance in case you injure somebody and it's your legal liability and they sue you. And even if they don't win, the company pays for your legal defense, which is a big number. But if you have a guest, let's say I invite you over for dinner and we have a bunch of people there and you're helping to prepare the salad and you slice the tip of your finger off. You can go to the doc in the box and my medical payments will pay on a no-fault basis, meaning you can go over, have a couple of stitches and present the bill and my insurance will pay for it without any liability.
It sounds like you're really paying for peace of mind.
You're paying for peace of mind and protection.
Right.
And these are things that happen to everybody.
Sure.
These things happen in life, right?
And if you don't get renter's insurance, conversely, you are in essence self-insuring, which is a little risky.
Exactly right. You are taking all of this on yourself.
And finally, if you'd like to know what other services OTA offers, you can check out our website at ota.dc.gov or give us a call on the telephone, 202-719-6560, or just visit us in person, 2000 14th Street Northwest, from 8 to 4 Monday through Thursday, or should I say 9 to 4 Monday through Thursday. Well, this has been the end of our time today. I'd like to thank Wayne McOwen for taking time to talk about renter's insurance. Very informative, very important.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you and to talk about renter's insurance.
Been a lot of fun, Wayne. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Now, this webinar and the others in our series will be available on the OTA website, ota.dc.gov. I encourage you, contact the OTA if you have any questions about your rights as a tenant in Washington, D.C. Until next time, I'm Derek McGinty.